Guys.
Hi, everybody.
All right, wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. This is our weekly live show here at Fearless Flight. However, tonight is our crew edition. Once a month, you have our lovely flight attendant, Diane. Hi, Diane. And Captain Eric, who is not sure what he's doing.
That's three of
but
us. One.
Oh, that's three of us, the best three of us, yes.
Okay.
And myself, Dieter Staudinger, first officer here at Fearless Flight. Captain Ron is getting the night off. He's doing a lot of coaching calls this week, actually. So that tells us that there are a lot of you interested in flying coming up over the next little while, like spring fever, spring travel. I'm actually myself in beautiful Puerto Morelos on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And I want to actually start with we have a flight class coming up on June 22nd. So we're flying from Burbank. And last week we said Oakland, but we've since switched it. We're flying from Burbank to Sacramento and back. And I'll put the link on how you can sign up for this class a little bit later in the chat. But we had Diane and Eric fly the last time we did this, not that long ago. And I just want to ask you guys, what are some of the highlights for you guys flying with Fearful Flyers from Burbank to Sacramento?
Oh, you go ahead, Dan, if you want.
Well, for me, the best part, the most interesting part, the most rewarding part always is, it's not so much the flight to Sacramento, it's the flight back. Because once we get to Sacramento, it's like, oh, that's all. That it was no big deal. We're ready. And then they come back and they're ready to go. That has, even after all these years, has never ceased to amaze me and to really make me feel gratify me as far as what we're doing for all of our Fearful Flyers. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, watching the stress melt away and them realizing that, hey, they can do this. There's no reason for them to hold themselves back and get over that bridge. That's immensely rewarding. Immensely rewarding.
Yeah, I have to say that I really truly always enjoy that as well. And you guys had Gary, right?
Yes.
Fly with you guys last week, and maybe I haven't checked the chat, Gary, if you're watching this. Maybe I think last week you said I'm back. So it's a great way. The class is really affordable, like the tuition. Right now we're still quite a few weeks out, so we have a bit of a sale going on. Like I said, I'll put the link in chat. And then also the tickets on Southwest are super affordable right now. So, and let's just say in the event, and I don't think last time anybody actually, I think everybody flew, right? Everybody that showed up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we always say nobody who's signed up for a 301 class hasn't flown eventually. So even if it's not your time to fly this time, both we as well as Southwest give you a credit, and then you can come when the next flight, when we do the next flight class. With that, speaking about flying, there was an article, recent article in the USA Today that talked about safety procedures, and me just flying from Toronto to Cancun. It was really striking for me to recognize how many people are nervous. It really, it really kind of, normally, I put my headphones on and I just kind of chill and whatever, but I really wanted to pay attention because a lot of people have apprehension about these budget airlines, and we might actually, Captain Eric is actually answering a question a little on later on in the show about, are budget airlines less safe than, let's say, the big four airlines in the United States or not. So, but Diane, what was in that article, and what are the things that you really want, especially fearful flyers, but really everyone who is flying, to kind of like take away from that safety briefing and the safety things?
Exactly, all those safety issues. Right, I saw this in our local papers, as Peter said, it was in a USA Today article. And the caption says, the title is "Many Flyers Don't Grasp Reasons for Safety Rules." And I know that in the past I've talked about on different sorts of issues and why I've gone into it, about why flight attendants say the things that we say. And after a while, sometimes I begin to wonder, for our fearful flyers and anybody else who likes aviation that's watching, if it gets boring, and maybe no one does have a question, and maybe I'm just kind of preaching to whatever. But when I read this article, I realized, no, there are a lot of folks out there who really don't understand, or they become anxious listening to the safety briefings, that sort of thing. And I really was very impressed with the tone of the article. Everything was accurate, very accurate. And to sort of expand on it a little bit this evening in my flight attendant's corner. The two big ones that people talk to me about, or why do I have to do that sort of thing, are the oxygen masks, about putting on your oxygen mask, because those are part not only of our announcements, but certainly our demonstrations. I can't speak to international carriers, but carriers in the US, we have demonstrations of seatbelts and oxygen masks and safety cards. And we're required to demonstrate how all those things work. And of course, we're talking about the oxygen masks, how they are put on. And there's some difficult, funny, but sort of difficult pictures to see on that people have taken, passengers taken in somewhat emergency situations. And they show pictures of people with the oxygen mask not even over their nose. So we're doing the demo for a really good reason, to show how they're used. But the other that's really important is to put on your oxygen mask first if you're traveling with a child or an infant or someone who needs assistance, perhaps an elderly parent or someone else in that sort of situation, while you put your mask on first. And of course, the instinct, particularly from a mother, I'm a mom and a grandma, is that you're going to help the family first. The problem with that is that there is something called the TUS, time of useful consciousness. Now, I don't want to scare anybody too much, but there is a reason why we want you to put your mask on first. And it goes from, if we're at 25,000 feet, the time of useful consciousness when you are, it's just that, useful, is only 2 minutes. When you get up to 30,000 feet, it's only 45 seconds. It's only 45 seconds. And at 35,000 feet, it's 30 seconds. And that's where most aircraft are flying when they're flying long distances, and even short ones. They try to get up to 34, 35,000 feet. And the time of useful consciousness is only 30 seconds. So we want the adult, the person who's responsible, to be able to put their mask on and then assist other people, because otherwise they won't be useful to anyone. So there's a really, really good reason for that. The other thing is that one of the questions addressed here was seat backs and tray tables. And we're always going through them. Raise your seat back, please. And then we'll stow your tray table, secure it, that sort of thing. And people very often, they're on their computer, they're watching a movie, and they say, oh yeah, I'll do that in just a second. And there are specific times when we absolutely have to have those stowed. And those are the critical phases of flight, when we're coming into, when we're getting ready to land, and when we're going to be taxiing, taking off. And it has nothing to do whether or not you're irritating the person in back of you because your seat back is back, or we think that you're going to hurt yourself on the tray table. You might do that, but that's not the reason we want everything stowed. And that's because it prevents egress. You are preventing, particularly if you're the aisle passenger and your tray table is down, or if your seat back is back, you are in the way of the passenger in back of you, and the tray table is in the way of everybody else there. And so it's one thing for, we want you to get out, but we also want everybody else in that same row that basically you're trapping in there if you don't stow your tray tables. So that's another very, very good reason. And the other one that's one of my personal bailiwicks is to stow your bags. So we are, in my airline, we have something called bins, bags, and briefings. We can't close the main cabin door until we've done the briefings, the safety briefings and the exit row, that sort of thing. And we have closed all the bins for the same reason. Bins, things fall out of bins. And when they fall out of bins, more people are hurt from baggage falling out of bins than they are from any other kind of turbulence, sort of not turbulence, but turbulence causes that and the bags fall out. And then bags, the bags have to be stowed all the way under the seat in front of you. And it's the same thing. It has to do with whether or not a bag sticking out is going to prevent the passenger next to you or you getting out. And the thing now is everybody has a backpack, and the backpacks have straps. And I have seen people when it's just a normal deplaning and they try to get out of their seat and their foot catches on one of the straps. And so imagine if it's an emergency situation and we are trying to get everybody off the plane and we can't do it because someone has tripped on a bag and they're in the aisle. And that means not only does that person not get out, the people in their row don't get out, the people in back of them don't get out, or maybe the people in front of them don't get out. So it can be a very, very dangerous domino effect if we can't do that. So for those three things, the oxygen masks and the seat backs and the tray tables and stowing the bags, they're all very, very important parts of our safety announcements and demonstrations. When we do give that exit row briefing, of course, it's the same sort of thing. We have to make sure that everybody is willing, if they're able to understand and obey English, because all of the American US carriers were all English speaking. And so you have to be able to speak English, and they have to be able to take orders, to follow commands. And I actually had to reseat somebody one time because that man said he wouldn't follow anything I said. So I had to move him, because if I'm telling everybody to release seatbelts and get out and he's not listening to me, that could be very difficult. We try to give as much information as we can with the details, but not so much that we make it scary. For some people that want more information, if they ask, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that they have that I'm able to answer. But for some individuals, they just want to know the basics, because more information is scary and it increases their anxiety. So it's kind of a delicate line that we walk to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And lastly, a lot of times I have heard people talk about that flight attendants are on a power trip when they're telling people what to do, stow things, put things away, that sort of thing. And certainly there are some that do fall into that category. But I do want to let you know that the FAA mandates the kinds of things that we say in our safety briefings. Each airline may tweak it, change the verbiage a little bit to make it unique to their carrier. But by and large, we follow pretty much the same script. And so the things that we are saying, those are coming from the FAA, from the federal government, because obviously they've got the experience, the expertise, they've done the research, they know what needs to be done and how quickly it needs to be done, and that sort of thing. So when those things happen, if you have a question, please ask your flight attendant. If something we say unnerves you, ask your flight attendant. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Put your mind at ease, and just go ahead and do it. What we're saying we want you to do, because it's all safety related. That's it. Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
Thank you, Diane. And I couldn't agree more with Rena, who says, Diane, you explain it the best. So,
Oh, thank
Cool.
so
you.
that's
Very
very, very true.
Thank you.
And you're right. I mean, there really are, you know, a lot of these things that you just said. If you fly often enough, they will, you know, you will come across these things. And so it's really, really important to follow these simple rules. Like, for example, I had this dad with his little boy flying next to me, and you know, little kid kind of undid the seatbelt, you know, as soon as we were at cruising altitude. And you know, in a joking kind of way, I was telling him that I don't want to peel him off the ceiling, you know, and stuff like that. So we were laughing, but anyway, the point was I was just kind of like helping, because you know, maybe they fly once a year and they fly, you know, on vacation, so they don't really know. And I never really, honestly, and we had absolutely no turbulence. But you can't really just rely on, well, my last flight 3 years ago was great, so this one's gonna be great too. It's better to, in that particular case, to be safe than sorry. And you know, it was no big deal, and he had his seatbelt on the whole flight, and then, you know, no big deal.
And
So yeah,
one
go ahead.
thing really quickly, you talked about seatbelts. There's a real funny video, a meme about safety demonstrations that you can always Google, and it talks about, it's supposedly a pilot saying what we really want to say about the safety demonstrations and what you really ought to know about. But be that as it may, seatbelts are different on an aircraft than they are in a car, for the most part. And so a lot of people, I can't tell you how many passengers I've dealt with that don't know how to, if they get it buckled, they don't know how to unbuckle it. And so when you practice buckling, or you put your seatbelt on an aircraft, if you haven't flown for a while, make sure you know how to unbuckle it, because it's not the same as a car. That's just another little thing.
That's a good advice as well. So, and I just want to say it again, because Gary Gary was like, I thought we're flying to Oakland, and yes, we all thought that, but apparently they canceled one of the flights and rescheduled the original flight, that return flight that we were on, and so there were only 30 minutes.
Yeah.
30 minutes between the you know, the turnaround, and that's a little on the tight side if you can make it at all. So we thought, well, better not chance it, and use the flight to Sacramento and back instead. So that's that, and I posted the link, so if you scroll down all the way on that page, the flight information is right there. And I do want to quickly also a shout out to Albert. Albert said, I was about to watch, exactly where you were about to watch, La Bamba. But then we were on with our live show, and so he's watching us. So thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Albert.
And keep tuning in, because, you know, in a comment he said, well, you're never gonna find me on a plane. I got, you know, claustrophobia big time. And all I'm gonna say is, the more you infuse yourself with the things that we teach, whether it's here on the live show, on our monthly webinars, or in our courses, and then maybe start, you know, little baby steps, you can get there. Absolutely. Like, seriously, Sandra didn't fly for 60 years, so that's a long time.
Current record holder.
Yeah, she's the current record holder. All right, so there were a couple of questions from last week that we didn't get to, and Captain Eric researched the heck out of them. So Eric, what were those questions, and what do we have to tell our viewers about these questions?
I'll get right to them, and trying to go too far down the rabbit hole on these so I can make a succinct answer. I wanted to tell you guys, the chief technical officer, that'd be Dieter, set me up last week as the last person on the planet not on Facebook. And I was very excited. And I had a really happy 3-day run. But apparently, I have a condition called BOT, B-O-T. It sounds like an unpleasant medical condition. I have bot face, not the other medical condition. And every time I got on, my account would lock up and I had to move my head and do all kinds of stuff with the camera to unlock it. And then would lock back up again. And now I have a message that they're thinking it over. And I wasn't even on long enough to make a post to offend anybody with. But hopefully it's going to get unlocked. He's on vacation and I'll be able to start communicating with you guys soon. But that's my story of 3 days on Facebook. So we did have a couple of questions from last week, and one of them was I made notes, but not about the questions. One of them was, so when budgets get tight and the FAA gets stretched thin, which is without making a bad joke, is they've been stretched thin since 1978, really, when deregulation occurred. And all the airlines just started expanding and expanding and expanding flights. The FAA grew, but they're always in a lagging curve of catching up. So the question was, with all the incidents in the news, how likely is it that airlines, especially the budget ones, are cutting corners on maintenance and the FAA doesn't have the personnel to keep watching or holding them accountable? Well, I can say from personal experience, they're very careful about how they allocate their resources. And a long time ago, I worked for an airline that did file Chapter 11. I was trying to remember if it was twice or once. And I can say from the experience there that when the airline is in trouble, the FAA marshals resources very heavily towards monitoring that airline for exactly that reason, to make sure that they are in compliance and doing everything on the up and up. That being said, also if an airline demonstrates a pattern of problems, that then indicates the FAA, oh, we need to go over here and see what we can do to straighten these guys out and talk with them. The downside is right now, I read some General Accounting Office reports and some Inspector General stuff. There is risk modeling in place for airlines now. They're hopefully working towards that. They've always just said, well, you have gigantic airline, Delta and American and United, you have gigantic airlines, so you need this many inspectors. You have not quite as big an airline, so you need this many inspectors. And that's very tough to use the resources correctly, and that's been addressed, and hopefully the ship will turn on that a little bit, where they can use risk management or risk modeling to deploy the resources where they can use them the best. That being said, the little short blurb I'll give you is the FAA is funded from, we've talked about it before, but only in brief, the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, AATF, commonly referred to as the Aviation Trust Fund. And this thing was set up in 1970. And when you look at your ticket taxes, when your taxes on your ticket, that's how it's funded, from taxes going into fuel sales to the airlines, and ticket taxes fund the AATF, and that in turn provides the lion's share of the funding to the FAA. And it's in very good shape. The end of fiscal year 2022, there was something like $14 billion in positive cash balance there. So there's money that could be spent on assets and deploying inspectors. Unfortunately, it's not Democrat, Republican political. It's a political thing, because the Congressional Office of Appropriations reviews how that will be deployed, and they need to make the deployment of those assets to get new guys, which hopefully, given current environment, they will do.
And I think that if I can just interject,
Sure.
there is obviously, I do want to say this, it is really, really, really also in the airline's best interest not to have an incident. Because as we can see with all the Boeing news and everybody jumping on Boeing, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I will say search engines like Kayak and others have already jumped on the bandwagon, and now you can not only choose your airline, but you can actually choose whether you want to fly a Boeing aircraft, a specific aircraft, or not. So it is. Now, that alone may not be enough, but it is in the airline's best interest to keep their fleet in, flying condition. So I just want to throw that in because we tend to forget that, especially you guys, you bring us those news like faster than anyone. And so it's probably bad for business.
It is bad for business, and instead of being a wink and a nod thing, the airlines are very good at that self-policing for exactly what Dieter said. They don't want to open a can of worms. They don't want the PR, and they want to get their problems fixed. If they find a problem, they self-disclose and get it fixed and solved before things go downhill from there. And the airlines are very good with that. So I hope that helps whoever answered the question. And this latest deal in the news about the 787, the engineer whistleblower, I have no idea what's correct and what's not, but at least that's out there, and he's a highly qualified witness person. And so the FAA is going to go right to the source and look at things, and it will be resolved. It will be resolved in an appropriate fashion, and at least they know specifically what to look at. So we'll watch the news on that. The second question was from somebody from the Midwest, and I was because I'm from the Midwest, having a hard time not letting a smart mouth answer rip, saying I have a couple flights and it's thunderstorm season coming up. What should I do? And I was gonna say, OMG, get in your car and leave. And Diane says, no, you can't say that. And so, which is not true, but I wanted to anyway. The thunderstorms do seem more frequent, and some of them more severe than 2, 3, 4 decades ago. But the answer to that question is we at the airlines and the pilots and the dispatchers deal with them in the same way they used to, in terms of avoidance, awareness of where they are. The difference is the technology with weather forecasting and the ability to transmit information to the pilots now is so much better. The best we used to be able to do was read teletype prints from dispatch or have them voice describe areas bounded by geographic areas where an area of weather was that we knew that we were going to have to deal with when we approached it. And then we would see it on our more rudimentary radar in real vision. It could pick something up at about 160 miles, but really until we got within 80 miles, we wouldn't be able to look at something and start making decisions on how we were going to turn. Well, now all of that information comes to us digitally and as a picture on our iPads in the cockpit. So we see real time where the weather is, the severity, everything else. It's like looking at the perfect radar that can see thousands of miles. It's right there on the pad, and we know before we take off where we're going to have to go, how we're going to have to do a reroute. And then when we get up close, we can see with the radar if we need to fine tune our deviating. But we have this pictorial and digital display of information in front of us that we never had before. And the pilots are able to make very good decisions on the weather avoidance before it ever leaves. So yeah, maybe there's more thunderstorms. Yes, you're flying in thunderstorm season, but the ability of dispatch and the pilots to cope with it with the information they have at their fingertips is now much better than it was even 10 or 20 years ago. Vastly improved. So I think it's fine.
And what I was going to say is one of the things that we have to do, and Eric can vouch for this, is when we start a flight, when we start a leg, we have the briefing. We have the briefing between the pilots and the flight attendants, and that's one thing we cover is, you know, say the pilots, if they don't say it, we'll ask, or they'll tell us, how's the flight going to be? You know, how long is it going to be? What the altitude? And is there going to be turbulence? And they can be very specific. It's just amazing. They'll say maybe in about 17 minutes. 17 minutes, amazing, but it's so precise. We'll be able to know when we might experience it, so we can kind of make sure we're a little bit more attuned as far as our passengers go.
Best thing you can do, summer season, spring and summer, is if you can, book your flights for early morning. As objectionable as it is to get up and go to the airport, that'll help you before solar heating has really started to impart a lot of energy to the earth and the clouds. You'll be better off for it.
That's so cool. And I just wanna because you guys don't see that, I don't think, but John just posted, he said, I've been watching a good amount of YouTube videos of a day in the life of a pilot. And I actually know that series, and it's really cool. And basically, you know, it kind of like talks what they go through and how they, how aware they are of all these details that you just pointed out, Eric. And that's one of the things, you know, Albert, like, for example, you know, normalizing that for you is really, really a good way to approaching that, because, you know, you guys don't think about it as pilots, but we are not familiar at all. So when all of a sudden this big thunderstorm cell shows up, you know, it seems very intimidating, but it's old news for you guys because you already knew long before what you're gonna do. And I just want to say that one more time: commercial airliners and pilots do not fly through thunderstorms as much as, you know, sometimes it looks like, right? But because I've been on planes where you see the lightning, and you know, it's really cool when everything around you lights up, but you're not actually in it. It just gives the appearance of being in it. But how far would you say on average do you guys have to give a thunderstorm?
On a rule of thumb, on the
Yeah.
upwind side of a thunderstorm cell that we're looking at, we'll usually give it at least 20 miles. On the downwind side, we'll give it at least 40 miles. And the reason we do that is because the winds aloft can be very, very strong. And if the thunderstorm is powerful and it's pumping hail out the top, we want to be clear of that cell downwind of it so that we don't get stoned with the hail. That's why we double the distance on the downwind side than we do on the upwind side. It's not, the hail's not going to come out the upwind side. It is, we're going to go,
Right.
Gee, that never happens. That's a rule. Well, it is kind of a rule. That never happens. It goes out the top and down the downwind side. So we give it much more respect and room on the downwind side than the upwind side.
And you know, these guys know what's going to happen even way before. I can't tell you the numbers of times in the morning we'll be in the van, the hotel van, the pilots and the flight attendants, and the captain has his iPad out, his little computer thing, and he's looking at the weather. I mean, we're driving from the hotel to the airport, and he's sitting there giving the rest of us, the FO, well, the FO knows too, but giving the flight attendants a blow-by-blow description of what it's going to be like. So we're well aware. I mean, even us not lowly people in the back, but I didn't say that, did I? I didn't.
But
Of all the people who's not lowly, it would be me. I'm just saying.
But you're in the know. What you want to say is you're in the know.
Okay, Eric, you can stop laughing now. But yeah, so we all know about what's going to happen long before most of the time before we can get on the plane. I mean, we can be sitting in the lobby of the hotel waiting for the van, and the captain will be describing what the flight is going to be like. And yeah, probably about a half an hour in, I may ask you to secure the carts and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's this, guys, it's not a surprise. I'm telling you, it's just not a surprise.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to look at that information digitally in the hotel van on the way to the airport. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. Lastly, I already put it in chat, the link to our monthly group coaching webinar, which is this Thursday at 6:30 Pacific. We're actually having a cool topic this month. It's about changing your story one story at a time. And that part of what that is all about is it can certainly feel overwhelming, tackling something as big as fear of flying, because there are, lots of different beliefs and lots of different sensations and feelings that come up. So where do you start? How do you pick where to start? Like, what's going to move the needle the most, so to speak? And we're gonna really do a deep dive into that, and also look how we can rewire um, that story to create a different experience. Okay, it's completely illusory to think that somehow you can just snap your fingers and you're going to walk on your next flight and you're not going to feel any of these uncomfortable or dreaded feelings. No, what we're going for is just like on a thermostat, or right now I'm saying just like on an air conditioner, you can modulate that rather than letting it get to the point where it completely takes you off the Richter scale, and that's a process, and while it may certainly feel like magic when you're actually on a plane and experience that, there is a process involved. It's like a recipe, and if you actually follow the recipe, more often than not, you're gonna, actually produce whatever it is that you wanted to cook or bake. So in that particular case, we're cooking up your next flight being at the very least a little less anxious, and at the very best a new experience. And when I say a new experience is that you may experience the same sensations, but you're actually relating to them differently, and rather than getting off the charts, now you're actually noticing that you are in control of your own feelings, your own thoughts, and that's a very empowering experience. So that's coming up this Thursday. The link is in the chat. And remember, if you're a Fearless Flyer Club member or you're active in the Cleared for Takeoff 201 class, those monthly webinars are actually included for free. So it's kind of like your own recurrent training here at Fearless Flight. Eric, Diane, are there any last words of wisdom or jest?
I just wanted to let you guys know I won't see you Thursday because I'll be in the Midwest hoping for no thunderstorms. And I'm gonna fly a 1946 Aranca Champion with my buddy, and we'll get some pictures to put up. It's an older fabric tailwheel airplane, so there's not a whole lot of that stuff on the roof like all these miserable airliners have. You don't have to memorize junk. And it's one of its salient features is it doesn't have an electrical system. So by virtue of not having an electrical system, you don't have to talk to people on the radio, which is annoying. The only tricky part is starting it. So one of us will be in the airplane and the other one will be on the propeller. Whoa, like that. But we're both old enough. We know how to do that. We're just arguing already which guy's in the airplane and which guy's on the propeller.
That's gonna be like a rock, paper, scissors thing.
Right. So I asked him, I said, so who's going to be Orville and who's going to be Wilbur?
Right. So
Here it is, it's the Wright brothers.
throwback.
So this is a plane from 1946.
1946 Aranca Champion. It has 65 screaming horsepower.
That's even
Wow.
before I was born.
And we're gonna fly it on and off a grass runway so we don't hurt the tires.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
I wish I
goodness.
could be there and see that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is very cool. And
Great.
yeah, Tracy, I don't think we'll see you in that plane, but but hopefully we all get to enjoy the pictures. So make sure you get
Take lots of
somebody
photos.
to take pictures when you're
Okay, your
on
seatbelt. Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't have to worry about my hair getting caught in the propeller. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Oh my Lord.
Awesome. Well, that was a great final word. Thank you guys for your time and your insights and wisdom. And I hope you have a great week. And we'll convene back here next week with Captain Ron. And I think he has a guest too next week as well. So make sure you tune in again Tuesday 6:30 Pacific. And thanks, Diane. Thank you, Eric. See you guys next time.
You guys soon, and hopefully on Facebook, maybe.